the problem solving ability, which is something I love doing. Here's a problem, here's someone who's struggling with something. How can I figure out what's going on? Run your own journey. You are very different to your mate. If you look at 90% of running related injuries, they are all overuse based injuries, from bone stressors, tendinopathies to patellofemoral pain, which is also called runner's knee. One of the biggest key ingredients is training load. There's a why behind the why. And I think sometimes when you get injured, you might sort of realize what is the fundamental reason as to why you want to run. My name's Adrian. I am the founder and founder of the Running Room in the UK. So we are a running specialist physiotherapy clinic. So we see runners from your weekend warriors, people starting to learn how to run, just the act of trying to get to 5K. And then we have a few really, really nice rapid runners and a couple international athletes that we treat as well. So a really nice broad spectrum of, runners from a 6-hour marathoner to a sub 2:20 marathoner, which is really nice to see. And then, everything else that comes in between, with people just wanting to run and stay fit and active. Bit of background on myself. As you can tell, I'm not from the UK. So I'm an Australian physio. I did all my training in Australia, did my first 5 years of practice in Australia. And then I moved here in 2019 thinking, you know what, let's go see the UK. And unfortunately, we got hit with a pandemic 6 months later, but I decided to stick around. And weirdly enough, running became the sport that everyone went to because it was free, it was accessible, it was probably the only thing that people could do. And it's sort of just kind of snowballed from there, really. And here we are today. We've got 2 running rooms across London, and I'm very proud to say that we're probably one of the premier clinics to treat runners and your hybrid athletes and active individuals.
Where did that passion initially begin for you then? Take me back to kind of like Australia and making that decision that you wanted to do physiotherapy and go on this journey of helping people. Where was that first born?
Yeah, for sure. I think it comes down to, I guess, firstly, Australia is such an active country. Like growing up, you just played a lot of sport. Like you'd play cricket on the weekend, or you'd play cricket for school. And if you were playing cricket at school, then you'd play touch rugby, or you'd play basketball, or you'd play soccer/football. We unfortunately call it soccer down in Australia because we've got so many different football codes. And then it just ended up stemming from that. I think I played pretty much every single sport that was offered within school. I wasn't great at any of them. We didn't have the luxury of being world class, but just the exposure to everything from rugby, basketball, cricket, football. It just brought a lot of activity and a passion to just be competitive and to move. And then in terms of, I guess, finding physio, I started off with the initial intention, weirdly enough, to go down the avenue of doing dentistry. So I did like a first year of like pre-dental, like medical sciences sort of degree. And then I just had this epiphany that, don't really want to be doing that. I don't want to be really staring down people's mouths. And I like being quite chatty and I'm getting to know people. So can't really do that when you've got something, probing in saying, how's your day going? And so, I think I sort of looked at physio as the next thing in terms of the problem solving ability, which is something I love doing. Here's a problem, here's someone who's struggling with something. How can I figure out what's going on? Just did my physio, did an undergraduate, did my physio masters. And then weirdly, I went into a clinic that I actually just enjoyed their approach to physiotherapy, but they also sort of treated a lot of runners and sort of like had a very established name to being sort of like the go-to running sort of physio clinic in Sydney. And then, I guess running found me really. I wasn't really someone who ran a lot. I'd never did any cross country or any of that stuff growing up. And just found myself treating runners and really enjoying the demographic. Great group of people to treat, very adherent, probably almost too adherent. Like if I give them, X amount of exercises to do, they'll come back and say they've done 2X because they want to get back quicker. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Running found me from that perspective. I sort of got into running for my own sort of health benefits, to lose weight, for a bit of mental health and clarity. Here I am, 10 odd years later.
The too adherent thing is something that is so true, isn't it? Because we have seen this explosion in running over the past couple of years since COVID. And there are so many people that will be like, right, I want to train towards a 10K or a half marathon or a marathon. I'm going to find a training program online and I'm going to start at week 1. And you're like, it doesn't quite work like that. You sometimes have to build up to that week 1 to be able to then begin. Since COVID's happened, is that something you've seen, that sort of overuse, that sort of increase in volume and intensity, maybe on a slightly too quick of a trajectory?
100%. And then it comes down to, so many factors. I think the biggest thing is, like, obviously with COVID, you took away a human's ability to be social. And as humans, we're social beings. And what run clubs and, these different run crews offer around London and the rest of the world is you have the ability to go for a run with someone, have a chat. So you get to be social, doing something you love doing. So inherently what we find happening is that people want to, at least within London, there are people that want to go to multiple different run clubs through the course of a week. And there's almost this element of like, I want to do all of those. So that's where your too much too soon comes in, the overuse. And then you had that sort of coupling with this sort of like social identity of sorts. People sort of go, well, I want to be a runner, I want to be recognized, and I want to be seen in this light. So you'll have a lot of people trying to have a presence in the running community because that's how they're attaching their identity, which is fine. There are way more unhealthier ways to attach your identity. So I'll take the running route. But unfortunately, what people don't realize, and this comes down to fundamentally what running injuries are. Like, if you look at 90% of running related injuries, they are all overuse based injuries, from bone stresses, tendinopathies to patellofemoral pain, which is also called runner's knee. One of the biggest key ingredients is training load. So when you've got people trying to be so social and get into things and be more involved in the community, you end up having a lot of people then starting to break down because they haven't respected their body, and they've looked at their mate and and said, well, they're doing everything. But the context is, firstly, you're very two different people. And then secondly, your friend might have been running for the last 10 years, whereas you've just been running for the last 10 weeks. So that contextual difference in terms of what your body is able to do, the resilience is very different.
I definitely want to get onto kind of the rewarding side of what you do. But you mentioned there about, people using this for their social scene, for their mental health, for their physical health. Does it ever become difficult to say to somebody, look, you need to slow down here, because without doing that, you're not going to be able to do this in the future?
100%. For me now, being in the position where I'm in my career, that's probably one of the challenges I enjoy the most. That's I think the hardest thing about being a really good physio and being a really good running physio is managing the athlete in front of you. And if you can nail that and you can understand what that person is trying to achieve and how important it is to them, then you can get all the other parts right, the rehab, the assessments, all those things can come in quite nicely. But if you're not acknowledging that person's desire to run, whether it's running for mental health or whether it's running for goal that they've been working on for the last X amount of years or months, then you're missing a big part of the picture for sure. So if someone's coming in and running is really big for them and it's a mental health reason, and if they're not able to run, then it has a cascading effect on other elements of their life, then you really want to try and understand how you can keep some level of running just to keep them stimulated and just to allow them to get that headspace. So you wouldn't want to just go, well, stop running. So, managing expectation is probably the number one sort of role, I would say, that the physio has to do and really understand that runner and what they need to get back to.
What's it like then when you've had somebody come to you and they've said, look, this is the problem. You set them a protocol, you treat them, and then however long down the line, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever it is, they're back, they're standing on a start line and they're getting ready to race. From a fulfillment point of view, that must feel incredible from you.
100%. And I think for me that, that's one of the reasons why I chose physio is we celebrate through our clients. When someone comes back and they go, I'm back to running, or I'm running better than I ever have, I've achieved a PB, all these different sort of things that go out there. That's a huge satisfaction for us. And it's a huge, affirmation of the things that we're doing right. So, London Marathon, great example. We had, hundreds of runners out there, and then, reaching out, looking at them on the tracker to see a lot of them PBing, finishing their first marathon. It's yes, it's a great feeling, man.
What's it like seeing the explosion of the running room? Because the amount of people that are coming to you, the amount of, you don't want to go on names, but the amount of names, the amount of like just everyday runners as well, the amount of people you're helping, and the knowledge that you're putting across, being able to help people on a day-to-day basis, not only, coming to treatments, but across socials as well. What is that feeling like that it's kind of exploded? And when it started, or when you first kind of got into this in London, did you ever see this happening?
Not at all. Like my plan was to come here for 2 years, because most Aussies will come here on a 2-year work holiday visa, will work for 2 years, and then I'll bugger off back home for some nice warmer weather. That was my plan as well. I didn't really see beyond the 2 years. I always saw that as like, I'm going to go back home. And life has obviously taken a very different direction. And to answer your question in terms of the amount of popularity and the sort of exposure we're getting as Running Room, I think for me the one word is humbling. Super, super humbled by people just enjoying the way we go about our business. We keep a very simple philosophy. We treat people like they're coming to our own houses. We want people to feel welcome. We want people to feel like there's not a need to have to leave. We have clients who will stick around and just have a chat because their mate's the next client coming in, and we might be doing some rehab, and there'll be a beautiful bit of back and forth banter. So we bring that running community into our clinic, and that's something we're really proud of. And just going above and beyond. We just want to make sure that when you think about it, someone is trusting you with their health, their well-being, and something that they really enjoy and they want to get back to. So we don't take that lightly. We want to make sure that we are really sort of taking care and nurturing that person back to full health, whether it's not just physically, but also, emotionally as well, in terms of how they explore that relationship with running. Because injury can be quite sort of grounding and can be quite sort of game changing for a lot of people, because they think they're invincible. They get injured, they try and rush back into running, and then they realize it's not that straightforward. And it comes with a lot of different sort of psychosocial sort of impacts as well. So I think what we do really well is we just sort of give people that understanding of like, you can running is not going anywhere. This is how we're going to get you back there. And this is, hopefully that just starts to give people a really new understanding on running. And something that comes to mind when I share that is, we've got a few female runners at the moment who are nursing bone stress injuries. And for the first time, having run pretty well for the last maybe 5, 6, 7 years of their lives. And when you get a bone stress injury, it's really shattering for a lot of runners, especially when they're training for, say, a marathon or whatever the event might be. So I think what's been really, really lovely to see is just their relationship with running, the way they now explore, how they would train, how they explore, training with friends, getting the balance right between I'm going to run with my community and I'm going to run by myself, because in order to get a balance and stay running and stay healthy, I need to probably do that. I can't be too social because I end up doing way too much. I'm running way too fast than running someone else's paces and things of that nature. And then there's other elements to, their relationship with food and things like that. We've got an in-house nutritionist, and Samantha is amazing. And, we get her involved with any bone stress case that comes in, because there's a lot of energy deficiency elements to it as well. Sorry. So, mate, it's a really nice feeling to be able to sort of help someone and get them to a point where they're in a better place.
It's so strange running, because there's this massive community element to it now, but it is also, like you say, like quite an individual journey. So I think sometimes, and this is where Strava and, all that sort of stuff, I think can be sometimes unhealthy, because you're seeing all of this that everybody else is doing and thinking, why can't I do this right now? And you kind of try and go and do that. I've experienced it myself over the past couple of months. I have had a big injury for the first time in a very long time. Actually not running related, just a rib injury, like an impact injury, but it's affected obviously my running. And it was something that I haven't had in terms of somebody saying, look, you've got to stop now for a month, because the way it's just not helping anything for what's kind of happened. And I just came off all that kind of social media in terms of Strava and stuff like that. Kind of muted a lot of people on Instagram, because for me that was like, I need to just have this time for me to build back to a place where I can actually go out and do it again. And I think that is difficult sometimes, isn't it? When you're surrounded by everybody doing all this amazing stuff, you're just like, I want to go. But actually sometimes it's so important to take that step back.
For sure. Like, I think the first thing that comes to mind when you share something like that is like, is that a decision you made consciously from the outset, or is that something you made because seeing everyone else on Strava and things like that was starting to impact your headspace?
I guess for me, it was like I just need to do what I need to do to get back. Actually, initially when I started kind of my journey in fitness and triathlon and stuff like that, the first 3 to 5 years, I actually didn't share anything. I just did it to do it. And then kind of the main reason I didn't share anything is because I was racing some of my friends, and I was like, I didn't want them to know what I was doing. And I kind of just wanted to take a step back to that, if that made sense, to kind of just doing it for me. Because I think there's that balance, and it's a real difficult balance to get right, I think, for those intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. So like, am I doing this just for me, or am I doing this because I know this race is going to get a few hundred likes on Instagram? And I think that's that is a balance that you have to kind of check in with yourself about sometimes, if that makes sense.
100%. And it's so, thank you so much for sharing, mate. But it's something that we see like quite commonly. I think I boil this down to like, what is your why behind running? What is your purpose? Because we all have different purposes. And yes, the social stuff is great and you get to run with your mates and the PBs are awesome. But I think there's a lot more that underlies all those things. Then there's a why behind a why. And I think sometimes when you get injured, you might sort of realize what is the fundamental reason as to why you want to run. What is it that running gives you? What is the joy that it gives you? And it is different for everyone. And we see this a lot is, I think, initially people get into running, it's fun. They associate a lot of the things that running gives them with the sort of external elements of like, maybe going to a community, getting a free pair of socks, or, the kudos on Strava and the likes on Instagram. And it's, gratification is nice when people are giving you applause and you're getting flowers. It's, no one's gonna say that's they don't enjoy it unless you get showered all the day. Well, that's a very different story. But that's a huge part of it. I think when you then are not running and you're not able to share something, and you can see other people are getting likes and kudos and things like that, it can start to become quite toxic as well. So I love Strava. It's a beautiful app. Come in, have a look at it. You can track someone's running load. You can track someone's journeys. It's a really powerful way to sort of benchmark yourself. But then you can also go the other way when you get so obsessive with it and you get so sort of entrenched in wanting to get sort of gratification for the work that you're doing, that you can go down the other way. And same with Instagram. And sometimes you'll see your favorite social media influencers and runners doing all these different things, and it's really tricky because people are trying to curate a life for someone else and maybe going away from who they fundamentally are and who they fundamentally need to be. And that's such a complex question to answer. It's probably beyond the scope of my expertise as well.
Is it motivational to you as well? Like from a personal perspective, when you're seeing these people like getting back to a place, or even like just preventing it, or, I'm sure you've heard some incredible stories over the years. Like, does that motivate you to get out and be on your own personal journey?
Yeah, definitely. I sometimes when you see when someone's struggling, you might sort of realize, okay, physios, as a side caveat, sometimes physios make the worst patients because we probably don't listen to our own great advice. So when I'm dealing with my own injuries and I'm telling people what to do, I think it's also humbling for me to go, okay, cool, like I need to take a piece of my own humble pie. But also on the other part of it is like when you see people win and do incredible things, it just gives you the inspiration that you could probably not necessarily do something similar. And the example I give you is one of my good friends is Johnny Davies, and he ran the tube lines last year. 6'5", big boy, over 100 kilos at the time, doing just a tick under 600K in about 11 days. That's a lot of load for a big human. So, I didn't look at that spending 11 days with them going, yeah, I can run the London Underground as well. That's not what I took out of it. But for me, it was like, yes, I can work towards being better with my health, my fitness, whatever it is that you do. I think if you've got a good, clear goal and you're motivated, you can really get to where you want to be. So I think, I sort of live vicariously through my clients and my friends who are out there doing their runs as well.
Earlier on in this conversation, you mentioned like treating people from the 6 hour plus marathon all the way down to 220. What is the difference between them as runners? Like, what are the main differences you see when they come into your clinic?
Great question. I think fundamentally everyone is trying to get better. I think that's always the key thing. Whether you're running 6 hours or you're running 220, you're still a runner. You're still trying to get better. You're still trying to push your body to a point that it hasn't gone before. It's just all very contextual. What you're seeing very differently is probably just more so alongside experience. Like someone who's trying to do a 6 hour marathon is still trying to understand their body, trying to understand how to, approach training, trying to understand how to like factor that all into their lives, versus someone who is a 230 marathoner or in that sort of zone is already at a position where they have embedded running into their life. So they're doing 6 hours. So they're doing 6 days a week worth of running, or 7 days a week. Some of them are probably doing double sessions a week. So there's a lot that goes into that as well, which is very different as well. So I think, a lot of lifestyle differences, without obviously stating the obvious around like what sort of paces, volumes and all that they're doing as well. But I think it more comes down to like how they've embedded running into their lives is probably the biggest thing. Whereas the 6 hour marathoner enjoys running, but probably isn't as, I'm going to use the word obsessive about running at the moment.
It's something that we've talked about a fair amount on the podcast, just speaking to people that have done amazing things, kind of that sentiment that the body is amazing, which I think no one more than yourself probably sees on a day-to-day basis. The body's ability to heal, the body's ability to adapt, the body's ability to kind of face challenges head on and kind of move forward. I bet there are some times where you think like, this is amazing. The fact that this is like healed up, or this is now better and you're back to a place where you can actually do something. That sort of sentiment, the body is amazing, must be something that you see pretty regularly.
Yeah, 100%. Because sometimes you'll have people come in and you might think, okay, you have no business trying to achieve what you want to achieve in the next 12 weeks. But, they're adamant about it. They're like, they're going to do it whether you help them or not. So in my opinion, they're going to do it anyways. Let me try and at least be the voice of some reason or some level of guidance. And yeah, sometimes and probably sometimes more than we think, people are able to get there and get there quite well. And you sit back and you go, damn, like that, maybe, are we not giving the body enough credit, or are we being too protective sometimes? These are definitely questions we always toy around as physios and as running physios. But yeah, it's incredible what people can achieve. Sometimes, people are also able to do things and push through pain because what they want to achieve is so important to them. So, they'll go out there and they'll be happy to run to a high level of pain and get something done because, for them it's like, well, I'll deal with the stuff afterwards because I just want to get to this point. I want to complete this because I've been working my butt off to get to this point in my life. So yeah, it's lovely to see. Not always advisable, but when it does work out and it all comes together, it's nice to sort of see that journey come together.
Just a couple more, man, because I know pre-COVID you would never have seen any of this happening. if we're kind of looking forward another 5 years, where does the running room go from here, and where do you kind of, I guess, where do you want it to go, and where do you think it's going to go over the next 5 years?
Great question. I think for me, what I want to do is always continue to add value to my community, giving away as much information and help and access as possible. I think, that's something we pride ourselves on, is to add value and to just help our community in the most simplest of ways, whether it's just going and being present at different run clubs and things of that nature. I think so. I want to continue doing that and continuing to impact as many runners as we can. So I think for us, that's one of the fundamental things. We build our business on community, and we always ask ourselves whenever we do something is like, how is this adding value to our community? And is this the best way that we can do it? So I'm always a firm believer is we've never found your best way. We're constantly trying to evolve what that looks like. So, what that looks like in 5 years is going to be very different to what we're doing here. But I think fundamentally, we're always asking and answering the same questions. And then the other thing is, the world of physio health medicine is always evolving. There's always new research at play. So how are we taking what's new and current, analyzing that critically? Because whilst there's new research coming out, a lot of the research that comes out isn't that well reviewed. So, you might have 100 new articles coming out on running, but only about 10 of them are actually value from the quality of the study. So how do we separate the good and the not so good in terms of what's out there? And how do we then disseminate that information to our community and within our practice? So, we utilize a high level of tech at the moment in the clinic. We have instrumented treadmills that no other physio clinic would have unless you're going to a research lab within a university. So, it's a very highly specialized piece of kit that, in the hands of someone who knows what they're doing, you can get a lot of great information. It's in someone else's hands, you could get a lot of misinformation. So, how do we continue to evolve and add more technology, but also deliver it in a way that's ethical and honest? I think for us, that's always going to be the evolution. There's always going to be more technology coming out. We go to a lot of different conferences, and there's some cool initial level tech that's coming out in the running space. It's always going to be crucial to see, is that something that's going to be feasible, or is that something that works great in theory but has no practical utilization at all? So I think that's for us, is just trying to be better than where we are now. What are we doing well? How can we do it better? What are things we're probably not doing as well, and how can we start to get good at that?
Now, I'm never normally one to put runners in groups, but just for the purpose of this question, we'll do it. We'll finish with this, man. If you could give one bit of advice. Yeah. If you could give one bit of advice to a beginner runner and one bit of advice to a seasoned runner, what would each of those be?
For sure. I think across the board, fundamental advice is run your own journey. Like, you are very different to your mate. You might have similar birthdays, similar heights, similar weights, and you could have all the same sort of, data that might go, okay, cool, we might be a very similar person, but you're also very different. Your biological makeup and how your body perceives things, both physically, both psychologically, is very different. So I think run your own journey, know when you've got to listen to your body and know when you can push it. To the beginner runner, I think it's take your time, pace yourself, think about why you enjoy running, what it gives you, that sort of feeling of euphoria, whether it's the endorphin rush, whether it's that feel good dopamine, serotonin release, what does that actually mean to you? What is the value that gives you to your life? And I think progressively just build up slowly. If you have this need to want to run longer and further and faster, just know that the human body needs some time to adapt. And I think for the experienced runner, it probably comes down to just being very good at the 1%ers, just doing things well without getting carried away and trying to do someone else's session and things like that. The amount of experienced runners that will come in and they probably know better, and they'll go, oh, I saw X, this GB runner put out their track session. I thought that'd be a great idea to do. And I was just like, clearly not. You're at my clinic now. So, I think just knowing that, there are at an experienced level, if you're running at pretty competitive paces. Let's say sub 3, there's a lot more sub 3 runners today than there were 5 years ago. You just have to look at the field at the Valencia Marathon and even the London Marathon to see how many sub 3 finishes there are these days. So, once you're reaching that point there, the margins are very small. So just know that, you've probably got the peak of your linear curve to go up, and you maximize that. And now your curve is starting to flatten out a bit. It's still moving in an upward direction. You just need to move a little bit. Like the effort to reward ratio is a lot different now. Like you're putting a lot of effort in to get very small percentage gains. Whereas when you first start off, you put maybe very minimal effort and you get incredibly better, and you're PBing every single 5K, 10K, whatever it is. But after a certain point, the balance and the shift is a lot different. So I think just be mindful of that and know that these things take time, and you're not gonna get there in necessarily 12 months, but at the same time, neither are you looking to hang up the boots in 12 months. So why have a goal that is probably more a lifelong goal and you're trying to get that there in 12 months? Like, why are you trying to do that?